on the standings as each of the athletes comes out of the water. 52 is Summer Cook. Yuka Sato follows her out. Gaia Perron is third. Then Routier and Abrosimova. Anoa Marua from Spain. Gillian Backhouse from Australia. Emma Moffat and Kirsten Kasper. Where is Non-Stanford? Riko Adachi, also from Japan, out in 12th. Then Jorgensen, the big pre-race favourite, coming out of the water in 13th position. Non-Stanford's name yet to flash up on screen. She's out now, 20th position for Non-Stanford. Not a bad start. She's 25 seconds down after the first lap.
Yeah, just a little mention there to Summer Cook, who we saw leading out there. First time racing on World Triathlon Series event. Summer Cook, of course, from the United States of America, had a big crash back in April. But one of those athletes that has come through the collegiate program as a swimmer, former swimmer and runner.
Gwen Jorgensen in the chasing pack, not far off the pace. Summer Cook still leads on lap 2 of the swim. Over halfway down now, and Summer Cook is really putting the hammer down here as the others struggle to stay with her. She's opened up a little gap. Weather seems to be improving very slightly. The rain has eased off a fraction. Visibility is poor, and I'm not sure if we'll be able to get helicopter shots by the time they get out on the bikes. I think the cloud ceiling level may need to lift slightly more as we follow the lead group back towards the dock. Transition area soaked through. Blue carpet wet underfoot, umbrellas still up, and they've completed the swim. Here we go, into transition. Time to start unzipping the wetsuits and preparing for the arrival. Into transition. Remember, the wetsuit has to hit the box. Swimming goggles and swim cap have to go in the plastic container next to where the bike is parked. And they'll hope for a quick exit. The way things stand at the moment, looking down, we've got a dozen or so coming out within quick succession, including Gwen Jorgensen, who's out in 12th position. 14, in fact, within 18 seconds of each other. So we may expect a lead group of a dozen or so riders to form at the front of the bike course as Adachi sprints towards her bike, just behind her teammate Sato. Emma Moffat is up there as well. Summer Cook, who was the fastest swimmer, is first to arrive at her bike.
Yeah, and the athletes won't be relishing the thought of this 40-kilometre bike course. Of course, it's 9 laps, as you said earlier, 20 corners to negotiate every lap. That's 180 in total over 40 kilometres. And in these wet conditions, I'm just hoping that the athletes can stay upright.
Non-Stanford into transition, just over a minute down, 61 seconds off the pace, as we're with Gwen Jorgensen now in transition. Summer Cook is on her bike, a little struggle to get her foot down on the pedal. You see the shoes attached to the pedals. They'll fit the feet into the shoes once they get up a little bit of speed and rhythm out on the roads of Yokohama. They're on their way for their first of 9 laps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about a dozen coming through. Lap 1, late in lap 1 now. Non-Stanford officially out of the water in 21st position. Now we're back out with the chase group about to close down the leaders, with Gwen Jorgensen up towards the front of the field. Conditions are dreadful underfoot. They're going to have to be really careful on the corners. There are 1 or 2 tight hairpin bends where conditions will be treacherous, and they'll have to really watch their step and try and keep the wheels away from each other. Just as I say that, somebody's gone down. Quite a heavy fall, and one of the riders, I think, is struggling. It's Perez from Mexico, I think, who's down, and she, I think, is out of the competition. Number 51, Cecilia Perez from Mexico, ends her race prematurely. Look how gingerly they're coming around that corner.
The problem here on this bike course is there's quite a lot of wet paint that we're seeing, where they've got crossings and lines in the road, and that bit is absolutely lethal when the rain hits it. It's the slipperiest part. It's almost like being on ice. So if you hit that at high speed and brake, you know, you've got very little chance of staying upright.
Conditions absolutely appalling now. And the unfortunate thing is that there's hardly anybody out watching the race because they've all been forced indoors to the dry. Gwen Jorgensen out in front, world champion, won the title with that emphatic run at the end of 2014. Last season she won here in Yokohama ahead of Ai Ueda in second for Japan. Terrific result with Japanese athletes second and fourth 12 months ago. Jorgensen's winning run began here in Yokohama, backed it up with a win in Hyde Park in the sprint, then won again in Chicago, took the title in Hamburg again over the shorter distance, and won the grand final in Edmonton. And her start to the 2015 season has been equally as impressive, with victories in Abu Dhabi, Auckland and again at the Gold Coast. She sat the last race out in Cape Town. They've completed lap 1 after 27.5 minutes of this World Triathlon Series event.
Well, she's a completely changed athlete this year, isn't she? Because last year her strength really was the run. She'd had a few tricky swims, sometimes had a few problems on the bike, but here we can see her in the early stages of this bike course actually on the front and setting the pace for the other girls, which is absolutely incredible because she's not known for her technical skills on the bike.
In these conditions, Annie, when it's so wet under the wheels, is it safest to be out in front, do you think?
Yeah, I think going into some of the tight corners and things, if you're happy, if you're confident that your biking skills are good, then you want to be out in front because you don't want to get caught up in a crash, because that's where you can lose a lot of time.
Now, Non-Stanford has found a bit of time. She was a minute down after the swim. Last time check we had, Non-Stanford had closed the gap, and with the chase group, Stanford is just 31 seconds off the pace. Aileen Reid is in the chase group, the triathlete from Ireland, wearing number 7. And they're about 27 seconds off the pace right now in Yokohama.
Malcolm Brown, the Leeds coach, has said that Non-Stanford, during all her unfortunate injuries that she has been working really hard on her bike. So no surprise to see her chasing really hard in this second pack.
Yeah, the Leeds Triathlon set up for Great Britain with Malcolm Brown running things in Yorkshire, highly successful, and as a result British Triathlon has an embarrassment of riches really when it comes to Olympic selection, which will happen later this year with a test event going on in Rio in August, and the lead group and the chase group about to merge.
Paula Finley there from Canada, just at the back of that chase pack, which, as you said, is now joining this leading pack. Paula Finley, of course, did so well in 2010 when she took the victory at the World Triathlon Series in London, but has been out with a lot of injuries, so it's good to see her back racing here in Yokohama.
The two Australians featuring, Ashley Gentle and Emma Moffat, up with the leaders. Australia have had a lean time in triathlon in recent months, hoping to put that right here today and find some improving results. Non-Stanford is with the leaders and is stamping her authority on this race by taking her turn at the front of the field. She and Gwen Jorgensen haven't met in a World Triathlon Series race for a while. The former world champion against the current world champion now out in front of this race.
And of course, perhaps a little bit of added pressure on after that victory from Vicky Holland in Cape Town just a couple of weeks ago, and I think that just gives her a little bit more pressure, probably good pressure, because she too will also want to be certainly on the podium.
Emma Moffat right at the back of this group, the Australian with number 5. Right at the front is number 54, Non-Stanford, and Gwen Jorgensen just tucked in behind.
That looks like Andrea Hewitt there in the colours of black and silver from New Zealand. Such a consistent athlete. 2011 she was first in Yokohama, so should be confident on this course. She's raced here several times.
Yeah, Hewitt 5th in the opener in Abu Dhabi this season. Backed it up with a place on the podium in Auckland, where she was 3rd, despite taking a penalty in Auckland, managed to get onto the podium. Well, the weather is drying up slightly now. The rain has eased off. You can see the brollies have generally gone down. But there are still plenty of wet patches on the road to watch out for. And everybody's taking it easy on these tight turns. And somebody's gone down. That's one of the Japanese athletes. It's Yuri Ide. Oh, how unfortunate for her. She couldn't maintain control of her bike through that left-handed turn, and I think the damage may well be terminal here. She's trying to fix the bike. Somebody else has come out as well, so 2 casualties on that turn.
You can actually be too tentative. I think if you come into the corners really hard on your brakes, you're going to go down as well. So although it's very hard in these slippery conditions, you've got to remain very relaxed at all times.
Another one of the Australians up there is number 55, Gillian Backhouse, in this leading pack as well. They're at the end of lap 6, 9 laps in total on the bike. Now that is a penalty announcement for number 54, Non-Stanford, and number 8, Charlotte McShane. They've both been penalised. That means that both athletes will at some point have to go into the penalty box and take a 15-second standing count. That will happen during the run. They've got 4 laps to choose from when they can step into the penalty box. I've got no idea why the penalty has been awarded to those 2 athletes, but hopefully we'll find out as the race progresses. It's a blow to Non-Stanford's hopes for a successful return to racing.
Yeah, she's not unfamiliar with the penalty. She had to sit one, didn't she, out in London in her last race. We saw her World Triathlon Series final in London in 2013, but of course she was absolutely on fire then.
And won the title despite having the penalty. Now that's Yura Ide. Look, her left thigh, she's got a nasty bit of road rash up there. They're deep in lap 9 now. At the end of this lap, they'll hang up their bikes and head out for the 10,000-metre run to conclude this World Triathlon Series event in Yokohama. And a massive group is jostling for position at the front. You don't want to get in trouble coming into transition. You need to have your wits about you, especially with a wet track underfoot. They'll be starting to think about removing their feet from the shoes and getting the arrival spot on right at the dismount line.
Yeah, really hairy this is going into transition. It's a massive group, and of course you can't afford to sit back. You really can't. If you lose 20 seconds in transition, that could be game over. Likewise, if you go up front and you get yourself into trouble and come down, then that's also going to be a huge problem. But as we can see now, the athletes just starting to undo the Velcro there of their cycling shoes and slipping their feet out, getting ready to do that jump off the bike that we see that they do coming into transition. Non-Stanford
leads them through, reaches down with a left hand, then a right to release the Velcro on the shoes. Stanford has had a cracking race so far, but she has that penalty looming over her, the cloud of that penalty still to be taken during the 10K run. I can only assume it was some sort of transition violation when she came out of the water. We've seen it happen a few times this season where athletes have not put their wetsuits correctly in their boxes, or the swim goggles have missed the target. There are rules that have to be strictly adhered to as they come off their bikes. Stanford needs to be quick in and out of transition, especially if she's going to have to stop at some point during the 10K run. Shoes on quickly. Gwen Jorgensen yet to arrive at her stand, number 1. Now she comes in, the American, not pushing it too hard. Backhouse of Australia first to leave transition after the second changeover, followed by Simic of Slovenia. Hewitt of New Zealand is right up there, and Non-Stanford not too far behind. And a massive group of runners, including Emma Moffat, leaving transition now.
Well, that was an interesting transition from Gwen Jorgensen, because she was right up the front of the bike, and then all of a sudden she's right at the back. I think she feels she can afford to take it easy. She knows she's got about a minute and a half in the bag over the rest of the girls out here, and so she just kind of cruises through transition, but she seemed to lose a lot of time there.
They're on their way. Non-Stanford near the front of the field. Gwen Jorgensen, you can just see her at the back of the pack. Tall, rangy figure of the world champion, starting to eat up the ground here. She's heading towards the front with Non-Stanford for company, the 2 of them aiming to get towards the front of this pack. Gillian Sanders is up there at the moment with Charlotte McShane, the South African and the Australian respectively. They'll all be aware as Andrea Hewitt takes her turn at the front of the field that Jorgensen is coming, and now she moves out and finds a bit of dry track, and Jorgensen kicks away. She's travelling at a different pace to everybody else. This is so familiar. We see it time after time. Jorgensen can arrive in transition after the 40K bike. A minute and a half, getting on for 2 minutes down, and still win these races. And she's already taken the lead, and it's a foreboding sight for the rest of the triathletes.
And that very familiar sight of Gwen Jorgensen there taking the lead, where we saw